Did you know that the FIA has just caused one of the biggest technical and political earthquakes in the recent history of Formula One? Today you'll find out why the teams are furious, what exactly changed about the 2026 regulations, and why drivers like Hamilton and Verstappen are up in arms. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. It all started with an ambiguous leak that went viral in a matter of minutes. The FIA eliminates the 2026 regulation. The news spread like wildfire through social networks, specialized forums, and general media. But in reality, what was happening in the FIA offices was not a total elimination, but an unprecedented technical crisis. The truth is that the FIA never eliminated the 2026 base regulation. The original objective of the new regulation remained ambitious, to create 50% electric and 50% combustion cars, with a new era of active aerodynamics and a philosophy that balanced energy efficiency with spectacle. A new attempt to reinvent Formula One. But this is where the problem begins. In theory, the new generation of cars was going to use intelligent aerodynamics that would change its configuration in real time, adapting to each curve, straight, or braking zone. In practice, engineers began to report terrifying results in the simulators. During the first virtual tests, the cars were so unstable that they lost traction even in normal conditions. Active aerodynamic systems with multiple configurations such as the so-called Z mode for high downforce and X mode for low downforce turned out to be uncontrollable in real racing situations. During long braking, the cars oversteered. Under strong acceleration, they understeered without logic. On a straight line, the slightest misalignment caused loss of control. And the worst thing, each team was interpreting the system differently. What for Red Bull was a smooth transition, for McLaren meant a risk of spin. And at Ferrari, according to internal reports, they couldn't even keep the car stable in a straight line for more than 3 seconds when fully loaded. The FIA then found itself between a rock and a hard place. It couldn't go back on its promise of innovation by 2026, but it also couldn't allow all cars to be dangerously unstable. The solution was an emergency maneuver: simplify the aerodynamic architecture. The advanced modes were eliminated, and in their place a simpler binary system was established: corner mode, which closes the ailerons to generate more downforce, and straight mode, which opens them to reduce resistance and increase top speed. But even this simplification generated tensions. Not only because of its late implementation, but because the FIA added a third optional state not initially planned: partial mode, activated only in low grip situations such as rain or dirty track. The race direction could force its use if it detects dangerous conditions, thus limiting the team's freedom of strategy. Something that was seen by several technical directors as an invasion of their operational autonomy. The teams, which were already in advanced stages of designing for 2026, were shocked. This simplification involved reviewing fundamental aspects of the car from scratch, including suspensions, cooling systems, mass distribution, and brake dynamics. Many designs that were already validated for production simply became invalid overnight. All this without financial compensation, without a postponement of deadlines, and with the constant pressure of the stopwatch that marks the beginning of the new regulations for March 2026. The bomb had exploded. And this is where the real chaos is born. The press called it elimination of the regulation because what was happening was equivalent to an accelerated rewriting, done not for innovation, but for technical survival. But that headline, although exaggerated, contains a much more dangerous truth. Formula One has lost control of the most important regulatory change of the last decade. What the FIA presented as an emergency simplification for the teams was a low blow, unexpected, and deeply costly. Technically, operationally, and even politically, the Formula One technical community has experienced it as a betrayal. Now imagine having more than 60% of the design finalized and approved internally, and from one moment to the next, in December 2025, when suppliers are already closing, you're told that the entire concept of active aerodynamics has changed. That is devastating for any engineering team, even the big ones like Mercedes or Ferrari. Teams like Aston Martin, Alpine, or Haas, which depend on external suppliers for certain key parts of the car, are especially affected. The supply chain in F1 is so tight that modifying a part can take weeks, even months. And in this case is not about one piece, but about an entire design philosophy. The case of Ferrari is exemplary. After having dedicated thousands of hours to integrating their rear wing design with the original Z and X mode philosophy, they were forced to rethink everything. And according to reports from anonymous engineers, the new configuration compromises both cooling and the expected dynamic balance. In other words, what had been fine-tuned with surgical precision is now a Frankenstein that barely meets minimum safety requirements. Long story short, teams aren't angry because they don't understand the need for change. They are furious because they were asked to reinvent a 2026 car in just 3 months, without support, without consultation, and with the risk of starting the season with a technically obsolete car before debuting. And that fury, although it is now contained in technical meetings and diplomatic statements, could explode in the form of boycotts, protests, or even partial withdrawals from development in certain teams. Formula One walks a tightrope, and the balance is increasingly fragile. The regulatory crisis has not only been a nightmare for engineers and technical directors. The pilots are also at the limit of their patience. And for the first time in many years, several of them have begun to express themselves publicly without any filter. The first clear signal came from Abu Dhabi when Lewis Hamilton tested a Ferrari prototype for the first time under simulations of the new regulations. The 7-time world champion, known for his ability to adapt to any car, emerged from his test visibly upset. He said verbatim, "This is not a racing car. It is a plane without wings that you have to land on every curve with your hands tied." Your analogy is not an exaggeration. Under the new active aerodynamic system, pilots must coordinate multiple simultaneous inputs, the exact moment to change aileron mode, the management of electrical regeneration, and the dynamic distribution of braking that varies each lap. Any millisecond error can result in a sudden loss of grip. They describe it as trying to play drums while driving on a frozen road. Lando Norris, current world champion, was even more direct. After his last simulator session with McLaren, he declared that it doesn't feel like driving a Formula One car, but rather like playing a video game with 6 controllers in your hands and none synchronized. For Norris, who has based his success on a fluid and progressive driving style, this new paradigm requires a radical change in his mental approach. George Russell, leader of Mercedes and one of the most methodical drivers on the grid, showed his frustration by commenting that it is no longer enough to be the fastest. Now you have to be an expert in software, energy maps, strategy, and real-time analysis. The worrying thing, he said, is that not all pilots have access to the same level of internal support. And that creates a competitive disadvantage that no longer depends only on talent. And the most emblematic case is perhaps that of Max Verstappen. The Dutchman, known for his aggressiveness, control over the car, and ability to adapt, has begun to show signs of concern. In an interview after the Chinese GP, he admitted that the RB21 is already difficult enough to drive in its current configuration without thinking about adding new layers of complexity to it. For Verstappen, the problem is not evolution, but the lack of time and structure to absorb change. Finally, there is a cultural impact that should not be underestimated. For more than a decade, Formula One has built its modern narrative around technical mastery, technological sophistication, and the driver as an elite figure. This hasty change, disorderly and loaded with unpredictable consequences, can damage that narrative. If the 2026 championship is perceived as a technical lottery, as a series of unpredictable cars where luck counts more than engineering, then the very essence of Formula One will be at stake. And that brings us to the heart of this whole discussion. It is not just a question of ailerons, modes, or regulations. It's a question of identity. What does F1 want to be in this new era? A sample of the maximum expression of motorsports? Or a category lost between bureaucracy and improvisation? The world of Formula One is going through a transformation that goes far beyond the technical. What is happening with the 2026 regulations is not simply a reconfiguration of cars, wings, or driving modes. It is a manifestation of something deeper, the tension between evolution and control, between innovation and chaos, between what F1 wants to be and what it is really allowing itself to be. The FIA claims that these changes were necessary, inevitable, even saving. But the teams experience it as a breaking of tacit agreements, a collapse in the logical timeline of technical development. Pilots, for their part, feel that they are losing control over their sport, becoming subordinate operators to systems increasingly disconnected from human intuition. Do you think the FIA is making responsible decisions to protect the future of the sport, or are you seeing clear signs that Formula One has lost control of its destiny? Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.